tutorials. It's Junior once again. This is lecture 3 and we continue. I've made a notepad once again, guys, because I thought it's really a good idea for you guys to always see what is going to be covered in our tutorial. So here are the topics today in lecture 3. Today our topics are control structures. One might ask, what are control structures? If you guys have any further maybe questioning regarding control structures, actually control structures, you might use any C++ textbook, or you can go to Google and then you'll understand what are control structures. Alright, here I'm not gonna try to explain it to you, but then you can use any programming book, you'll know what are control structures. Okay, alright, in C++, maybe in all programming languages, we have various control structures, and then here are the ones that we'll be looking into in our tutorials to follow. So our first control, we have two types of control structures, namely control structure. The first one here, I chose it to be selection structures. These are structures where you'll be having certain conditions and then you'll be selecting certain statement to execute, to run certain statement, and then within the selection structure you only select a certain part of the statement. You'll then be having an option to choose. You don't run all the statement in a control structure, namely selection. You select given a certain condition. Alright, so it might be maybe kind of like tricky for you guys here, but just be with me, don't skip the lesson, and then as far as you continue you'll be able to understand. Alright, for now let's just stick to it. Is selection structures, and then namely the first one is if else statements, or some they might say if else conditions. Yes, if else statements. This is how it is. If, and then you'll always have it like this, if, and then now it comes within the brackets and say this condition, if this condition is met, and then you do something, you run a certain statement, you select a certain statement to run. Or if this condition is not met, you go to the else part, you'll then say else, and then you'll have, after this else, obviously you'll also have, this else will also have the statement that you'll have to select given that this condition is not met, and then you'll go to the else. Right, it then means it's always about selecting. You select from the if part or you go to the else part, just like a normal English. Like when someone talks to you and they say if you have money then you can buy a car, right? Then what if someone doesn't have money? If you have money you can buy a car. That's my condition. If you have money you can buy a car. Else, if you don't have money, then you can't buy a car if you don't have money. Right, guys? Cool. That's just me trying to give you an example, just the idea. Alright, so now we go to switch statement. Switch statement, it also works the same as the if else. Is the same. You can convert from switch to if or if to switch. Here on switch statement, written switch, and then as you see inside the two brackets I write trace. The idea and why I came to conclusion that actually I should write trace here, maybe you have seen it somewhere, they've written a condition or statement within the brackets, but then here I chose trace because I normally, when I'm helping a lot of guys on programming, I always tell them like what I've come to realize in when you're coding and then you're running a switch statement, you'll always have something you are looking out for. So that's why I chose here to say trace. Maybe you'll have a certain variable that you'll be looking, or a certain value that you'll be looking within your statement. Then it then means you're tracing what? A certain value. That's why I say trace. Your trace target. I can say your trace. Yeah, your trace target. Let's just say your trace target like that. And then now, and then these are the same. This is the same as the if else statement, right? So that's what we'll be looking into in our next tutorials. And then remember, selection structures, you can quickly just look into them and then pause the video and then read them and then try to check in any book, and then now you'll then come and continue with us. All right, then now the second type of structures, we have repetition structure. Simply repetition structure. When you say repetition structure, yes, it's repetition. The structures that will allow you to repeat, to keep the repetition going. Like normally they call it a loop. You keep the loop running till a certain condition is met, and then that's when you stop. You keep repeating as a certain condition satisfies, as a certain condition allows you to do so, and then when it doesn't, that's where you stop. So we call them repetition structures. Sorry guys for the sound, I was just clapping my hand, sorry about that. All right, and then now here are the types of repetition structure. A while loop statement. All right, a while loop. Here simply will say while, okay, the syntax is like this: while, and then you'll have a condition. While this condition is met, you keep repeating, right? You keep looping. A while loop. You say while this condition is met, is satisfied, and then you keep looping till where this condition is no longer satisfied. Then that's when you stop. That's where your loop get excited. All right, that's when you stop. And then the second one, I chose it to be the do while loop, right? A do while loop, as it can be read in English, do while. You do something while a certain thing allows you to do so, while a certain condition allows you to do so. So here is a bit of how it will be like in a program. When you're coding, it'll be you write do, and then you'll have a bunch of statements. You might do a bunch of statements, and then you do these statements while this condition allows you, while this condition says something, which you're then happy to see that, which then means that if this condition is met, if this condition is satisfied, we'll keep what? Doing the statements. Do while this condition is met. Keep, that's how we'll be repeating, right? And then the third one here, I chose it to be a for loop statement. All right, for loop statement. Okay, this is how the for loop statement, this is how a for loop will always be structured. This is very important, guys. I try to write it here in ways so that you guys can see. Okay, inside the for loop, this is how it's written. You write for, and then you open the bracket, and then the first part, the for loop will always contain of three components within the brackets, right? Now the first part, which is this one highlighted, all right, note, it will always be a declaration and initialization. Please, for now guys, let's just keep it that way. It will always be, for now guys, let's just keep it that way. It will always be declaration and initialization at the same time. And then now you came to your semicolon. That's where you terminate to mark that this is one thing. All right, and then the second thing is your condition. You'll have a declaration and initialization, and then you will have your condition, right? And then after the condition is either you'll have increment, which is normally increment, guys, we know is when you just say, let's say if we have a variable I and then you say I plus plus, that's how you increase only by 1. Increment is only by 1, you increase only by 1. Or you might have a decrement, right, where you decrease only by 1. So these are examples here, guys. Okay, we'll say for in I is initialized to 0. This is a declaration and initialization. So we declare an integer variable I, and then we initialize it to 0. Okay guys, remember, if you're still maybe worried about what this thing here is, you can go to our previous lessons, then now you'll know what declaration and initialization mean, and just declaration means, right? Because we've covered in our previous lessons. And then now this is our condition. Let's just read our condition mathematically. And then it then means we're having what? I, which is our variable here, our integer I, and then we say less than 10. Is I less than 10? That's our condition. That's what you'll be looking into, as much as the for loop will be repeating. Remember, it's still inside repetition structure. We'll repeat given this condition is met. All right, and then if this condition is met, the only trickier part is that you'll go inside, you go within the for loop, and then you'll run your bunch of statement. Okay, let me just show you guys here. You'll be having these parentheses, and then here you'll be having these parentheses, and then you'll have a bunch of statements here. You'll have bunch of statements. You'll have bunch of statements within your for loop. So now this is how it works. It will come to a declaration and initialization. You declare a variable, and then now we have the condition. If this condition is met, you see our variable is I, and then we initialize it to 0, and then it's simply going to say is 0 less than 10. If that's true, 0 is less than 10, it then means we come inside, we run these statements. No matter how many statements you have, that's what you'll be doing. You'll go inside and run those statements, and then after running the statement, you'll come. Normally they used to say it comes and hit here, the closing of the for loop scope, and then it hits here, and then it goes bang, it goes back to the increment or the decrement, and then now it changed your variable I. So it then means here our I is going to be increased by 1, and then means you're looking into a new value of I. Then you come to the condition again with the new value of I, right? When you come to the condition with the new value of I, let's just say here now our I will take a form of I is going to be equals to 1. All right, remember, if you have declared a variable and initialize it to a certain value, once in a program, as long as in the program there is some way where you give that variable a certain value, a different value, it then means the old one is then erased, and then the new value is there. So it then means in our I there is no more 0, is what we have now is no more 0. We are going to have what? 1 in our variable I. It then means it's going to say is 1 less than 10. That's also true. It will keep running the statement till where, and then keep running the statement in a circular way till where this condition is not met. If this condition executes to false, it then means you don't even enter and run the statement. You go outside the for loop, do whatever that is next outside the for loop. All right, guys. So here on the second example, it was where I was showing you I wanted to emphasize the decrement, the idea of decrement, but then running the program, the logic is always the same. So here you'll also have let me just write again. Sorry about that. You also have bunch of statements to execute. All right, we always have bunch of statement to execute, and then after, if it was true here, you get inside, you run the statement, and then you hit here, and then you go to the decrement. So then now you are reducing I by 1, and then test the condition again with the new value of I, then run the statement. That's how you'll always keep repeating. But then now, guys, on our next tutorial, guys, I'll be emphasizing each in a practical example where we will have certain condition. I'll also prepare a notepad, and then you have certain statements, and then now we'll first start with the selection structures, and then see how actually encoding they works. So this is very important for you guys. You can have this notepad and sit with it, and then just try to write to read through, and then see the examples, and then see how other books explain. Then we'll be ready to go for our next tutorial, which is lecture 4 in a short while. All right, guys. Okay, see you in our next lecturer. All right, bye for now, guys.